Welcome back to Leaving Babylon. I'm Madeline. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to go on a little bit of an adventure. We're going to be looking at some old maps and just some new information that you may never have heard before. So, this is going to be exciting. I was excited doing the research. These ideas have been floating around for a while, and I do have snippets here and there in all my research notes, and so I had to pull pieces together and kind of connect and weave some things. But I hope that you find it as fascinating and fun as I do. So, I was always one of those kids who was sitting with a big map book before the internet, and I'd be looking, just like investigating through. We did traveling when I was younger, so I'd always go ahead and look at the maps before we went, and it was always a real adventure, even just before we packed our bags, because you'd be looking at the maps and you'd be thinking of all the places you would see. And then we'd go on road trips, and I'd be the one with the map in the car, the big paper map, and I would be telling everyone what was coming up, how many miles from here to there. So I really do like maps, and I really do like studying them and just observing things that are not necessarily road marked, post signed along the way. I think it's really the power of observation is so important. And, maybe we've lost some of that as a culture with everything that's spoon fed to us. We don't really stop to take a second look, right? And I think that's what it takes. It's like, take a second look deeper, go a little bit further than you may have at a glance, or don't even just listen to people, what they're showing you, observe other things, read, labels and names and things like that, and just try to decipher little bit more of the bigger picture as you're looking at things. That's just something I try to do, and I find it really helpful. So today we're going to go through a little bit of just looking at, I'll start with Google Earth, then we're going to go into some maps, and we're going to talk about a few different features, but really this one is called Strait is the Way. Strait is the Gate. And that comes from Matthew, the book of Matthew. And so it's a very interesting verse, actually, as we look at that, and we're also going to be looking at maps. There's a clue for you. So bear with me just a second. We'll get going. All right, and I know a lot of people probably do this as well. You go to Google Earth and you look at the different lay of the land or lay of the ocean, whatever it might be, and you sort of try to find recognizable features by name, and maybe you've been there, maybe they've, maybe someone in your family has been, or you're interested in a certain type of research, which I am. And so obviously the North is really interesting and important to the conversation around the millennial reign. Where did Jesus Christ go and the saints? So here we're looking at the north of Britain, north of Scotland. We've got the Outer Hebrides, which are these islands here. And basically Scotland is the furthest north in Britain, including some of those islands, the Shetland Islands to the north. And then the Faroe Islands, which I don't think they belong to Scotland, but they're certainly an important location because they are on the older maps as well. We've got Iceland, which is recognizable. I've been to Iceland a couple of times just on my way through to different places, and Greenland. And then we have the Svalbard there on the right at the top. And that dark patch at the very north, which we know is, many of us would agree, is probably land. So Greenland is huge, and I think it was Toad House 7 was talking about how it's not exactly proportionate, because if you overlay Greenland and North America, it's getting to be nearly the same size, which is ridiculous. And so I think the ratio of land to the ocean is just a little bit distorted, probably a lot distorted, and looks very different on the old maps as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. So we're just looking at the north here and seeing how far north we can go. I want to talk a little bit about this map, which is the Ortelius map, and I'm trying to think what year it is, 1570. So It's essentially focusing on the area around Greenland and the Northern Sea, which would also include the ocean of Hyperborea, is what they used to call it. And we can see here there's Ireland and those northern islands as well. Um, so we've got England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales obviously is in there. We don't want to forget Wales. And the Germanic Ocean. The Outer Hebrides are showing there as well. And then the Faroe Islands are there at the top. So these are distinguishable. There are some islands there that are not showing on the newer maps, and just want to point that out as well. And I also want to say that there's these red dots all over the map, and I believe that those are almost like, I don't want to call them kingdom points or castles, fortresses, I'm not sure. But over here, if we go back to this Google Earth map, we can see that there's Iceland. Okay, and the Faroe Islands, and it looks fairly empty around Iceland. And it just looks like Iceland and Greenland. And then Svalbard further up. I think that's Svalbard, which belongs to Sweden. And then there's nothing other than very dark water in certain areas and some smaller islands. So if we go back to this map here, you know, we can see a few more islands dotted around in this area. And I'm labeling that island there as Iceland to the left, the white one. It says Friesland on it, and okay, we can disagree, but Greenland doesn't look anywhere near as big as it does in current maps or on Google Earth. And we can see that there's the ocean Hyperborea. And the Faroe Islands. But none of that. Actually, there's one island here, which there's a tiny little island, but there's only one. There's Greenland, and then this, which I think is Friesland. I think that is the smaller of these two islands next to Greenland. There's only one, you see? And the shape of it actually looks like that one to me. Again, free to disagree, but there's a reason I'm saying this also. And again, you can see the red dots there, and it does just bear a resemblance to Iceland in its shape and position. So that little crop out on the left, it just kind of looks the same to me. And really nothing else there. Very interesting, considering there's this island here, which actually is Island, Thule, Island Thule. And if anyone knows that name, Thule, we're going to talk about that in a different video. I have a whole different, essentially it's linked to the early 20th century Germans. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But at this time, this is an island. And I don't see it on our maps, any modern maps. But it has castles. It has the red dots on it showing what look like castles to me, because as you go throughout, there's even some up there on Greenland, as you go throughout these old maps, you'll see that there is actually distinctly these kingdoms or kingdom outposts, or those might be your priests and kings, those areas that are being served by the Most High, Jesus Christ, the King, right? So, but yeah, Thule Island is not on our new maps. And then we have Greenland, which incidentally looks very, very close to the land at the north. But no Thule on our modern maps. It's also interesting, it sits right in the ocean of Hyperborea. But you can see how many red dots are here. There's many, many red dots. And on the Tartaria maps, they do the same thing. They put these red markers, and this is a little bit of a blurry version, but if you look at them in a clear version, you'll see that they are castles. Whoops. So this is the map, Artelius, Greenland, 1570. And then we have the Mercator map of 1595, showing the North Pole. And I just want to correlate the two. And as we go in here, you will see that again. Greenland, Iceland, that's what I'm going to call it. And the Arctic Circle, this red arc, goes right through the island of Thule. Again, you can see the Faroe Islands there, and one island, two islands. So I was just very curious why. And something else I have to say about this is the name Thule, Thule, is, if you look it up, they've given the name to a location on Greenland, which is very odd. And so I just want to make note of that. It's like they've hidden it, and then they've shifted the name to somewhere nearby, but almost as if you wanted to create a narrative of this place, you could just say, well, it was just Greenland, right? So, oh look, there's a Thule on Greenland. And one other weird fact is that Thule is an outdoor gear company. So here in North America, you'll see lots of people driving around. Their cars will have like a bicycle carrier on the back, and it has Thule on it. So just to make a note of that. Greenland, and then there's another little island there too that looks like it says Greenland, but again, just showing that this is very close on these maps. Greenland is very, very close to this mountainous region in the north. And Greenland's very mountainous as well by the looks of it, if we're trusting the details on this map. But that's a very, very, very close fit. And just showing here again, we just have these two islands that it's quite unexplainable. You can go look yourself. Greenland shows as one, and then there's just one Iceland next to it. So looking around here, there's a smattering of islands all around the side of the north as well. So we say the sides of the north. All these islands that have been somewhat just hidden. I guess there's no other word for it. They've been hidden on our modern maps. So it's just very interesting to look at these and to kind of see as well where the Arctic Circle goes through. I find it interesting that it goes right through the island of Thule. It looks quite populated too. There's quite a few locations named on there in both maps. So they obviously had names. They had, they were recognized enough to put them on maps. And then here we have the Rupus Nigra, which is the black rock right in the middle. And I know a number of people have gone and translated these. I'm just going to keep moving through and across to the other side. And I want to point out that this area here is Alaska. It says California Regio. We don't really know, I don't really know, maybe other people do, what the name California means. I've heard a lot of conjecture. It says Hispanis on there, so maybe the Spanish had come all the way up and they were naming these places. But the Arctic Circle is quite a ways down from this area here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in, and I just want to draw your attention to the El Stretto de Anian here, this narrow passage of water, which comes up between Russia and America, who own Alaska. Quite the thing that America actually bought Alaska. I think it was for $1. Could be wrong. So here we're looking at top of North America and top of Asia. And it does actually name Gog there. Number of other names are in there too that might be recognizable, such as Mongol, Tartar Villa. If you look through that, you'll see some names that are very recognizable. Belgian. It's quite strange to see that up so high there. But we can see Gog is there, which shows on a lot of the older maps actually. And so what I'm focusing on right here in the middle of this frame, if you can I'll zoom in here. I want you to read these words. It says Polus magnetis. This rock, Polus magnetis. And when you translate that, it says the magnetic pole. And we always hear the difference between true north and the magnetic north. And I think this is why the center, the true north, is not the same as the magnetic north, according to this, anyway. So we're going to do a little bit more research into that now. But you'll see that right above the Strait of Anian, which is the old name of the Bering Strait, beside Alaska and Russia, you get the magnetic pole. And then you get these waterways that come straight into the center where the North Pole is, the true north. And for those of us who believe that is a marker for Jesus Christ and the celestial city, the kingdom, that's the significance of this map. Now, whether it's floating above or whether it's actually on the North Pole is up for debate. And just to note as well, there's another narrow passage here, but essentially the North Pole, the magnetic pole is here. It seems strange to think, and you do need to deprogram that part of your brain if this is what you're going to start considering, because it's a very repeated thing that the true north is, that the center, the Rupus Nigra, is the magnetic north, or is the magnetic pole. And just the point here is that I don't think they're the same thing. I think that's the magnetic pole and this is the true north. Again, we're going to look a little bit more into this. So going back to Google Earth, just zooming in here, we're back to that. This island here is in a position that matches that magnetic pole. And you can even see here, there's that little strait of water. And if we're going to look at this darker substance here as actually being land, then we're looking at the same map. And here might be those rivers that are indicated on the Mercator map. So just going in a little bit, you can see a little definition around there. And this is the north of Alaska. And so here would be that one of these, and I think it's this one, would be the magnetic pole. That looks a little too small to be it. So I'm going to go with this one for this hypotheses. And you'll notice this line coming through. So that was curious to me. And backing up, I realized something. That line, and some of you probably know this right off the bat, it's the international date line. So how interesting that it goes right through. It kind of bends there, and I think that's just making up for this false globe. There's a bend in it, but I think that is just trying to correct it according to the globe. But essentially it comes up here, it comes up through a little bit of the Russian side. It doesn't go right through the Bering Strait. And it comes right through this island. And if we're talking about this island as if it's the magnetic pole, that is very, very interesting. And so I want to read this verse now, Matthew 7:14. Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. That word strait is not the same as the word straight. There's two. And when we're talking about this word straight, that is the word that they use on these waterways. The Strait of Anian, the Bering Strait, is spelled like this, and this is in the King James Version. Strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. I wanted to draw attention to that because words matter. They have different definitions in the original language. And as we're finding out, the Bible has a much more literal context than we've been taught. We've been taught to allegorize things, stories and features in the Bible we've been taught. And I think learning biblical cosmology has been a big part of this awakening, reading the Bible more literally, but also paying attention to words. Because words in the Bible are very specific. They've been given to us for a reason. And we should pay attention to that. So again, this is me conjecturing, but I'm just bringing it to your attention also. I think it's important. For one reason or another, this is important. It was written this way for a reason. And we should really, really stop and look at these words, go into the concordances, and that's what I'm going to do now. So we're going to look at this in a little bit more original language context. And this word straight is not the word that's used throughout the Bible for the word straight. So we're going to find out now what is the difference between strait and straight, because they don't mean the same thing. And yeah, so this was a little clue for me. Again, I've done a KJV search on the other word straight, and you'll see it's referenced in the first 5 ones here, all the way up to Luke, not Matthew. Okay? So straight and straight in the KJV are 2 different words. Just bear with me a second. Okay. And so I also got curious about that area and what are the names of the places in that area. So we know the Bering Strait or the Strait of Anian. And what are the other places? And obviously Alaska is known for its capital city, which is Anchorage. And I did a little deep dive into Anchorage and the action of anchoring. Okay, so conditions admitting of anchoring, anchorage ground, a position of support, a hold, a stay for the mind or feelings, ship anchors, and in the church is an anchor, the new anchor in the Bible, and then the retreat of an anchoret. So held fast, firmly fixed. This is actually, I think, contextually, this is also related to biblical cosmology. When we think of the firmament, the fixed firmament, the fixed earth, this was a revelation to me. Anchorage, Alaska, right on the Bering Strait, right there in that Arctic area of the world. This language feels significant in the way that it's placed. So when I go back into the concordance, I use the Blue Letter Bible. We look at Matthew 7:14, and it says, "Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." Again, so here the word is straight for a gate, like a portal, like a gate, and narrow. So here we go. It's 4728 in the concordance, and it's under the name stenos, strait. And it's from the base of the word G2476, straight, narrow. So we're going to look at that. To cause or make, to stand, to place, put, or set. As we go through this, we'll see that there's a very, it doesn't mean straight as in a straight ruler. It means to stand, to place, to put, to set. So in the presence of others, to make firm, to establish, to cause a person or thing to keep his or its place. Again, just that idea of the firmament. And to stand, to be kept intact. Whoops, sorry about that. So of family, a kingdom, to escape in safety. To establish a thing, cause it to stand. To escape in safety. These are the words that are used for straight, S-T-R-A-I-T. To set or place in a balance. Immovable, stand firm, of the foundation of a building. Is anyone finding this as interesting as I am? Because I always thought straight is the gate meant like a ruler, like straight. But no, this is what it means. Continue safe and sound, stand unharmed, to stand ready and prepared, to be of a steadfast mind. So we have this idea of standing still, firm, safety, unharmed, prepared, stand ready. All of this, stand still to establish, and then the kingdom of family. So as it relates to the millennial kingdom, as it relates to finding Jesus, which is what we're all looking for, let's just bear this in mind, that the word straight is significant. It is significant. And then when I went down further down the page, I came to this. It says, when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east. So this is the same usage of this word, okay? When they saw, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Talking about where Jesus was as a baby. Stood over where the young child was. This is the word for straight. To stand, to be firm, the foundation. And when the devil took Jesus up to the holy city, he set him on a pinnacle of the temple. Again, the same word, straight, to stand. Word analysis and word study is really, really critical when you're looking at the Bible. And I encourage everyone to get the Blue Letter Bible on your phone. You can find any verse you want and all the words that relate to it. Okay, Strait of Anian. Now this was pretty eye-opening as well. It was believed by early modern cartographers to mark the boundary between North America and Asia, and to permit access to a northwest passage from the Arctic Ocean to the Pacific. So permitting access was a part of this, the function of this strait. The true strait was discovered, blah, blah, blah. So after the 1700s, they started to talk about it in a different way. They renamed it and made it all hazy for people to really understand. So they blurred the facts. But the old maps give us this visual of this strait being the connection between the Arctic and the Northwest, North America. So, and it says it marks a boundary. And now we know in modern times, I mean, they must have known it back then too, that the international date line lined up right up there, right up next to the Strait of Anian, and went through the magnetic pole. So this boundary, this sense of a boundary and a marker is, again, it's something you need to pay attention to on these maps. So then I got looking at where did this word Anian come from? And when I drilled down, I won't give you the whole backstory, but when I drilled down, it looks like it's connected to antimeridiem, or meridian, which we call it now. And that stands for AM. So your early time of the day, your morning half of the day, or your front half of the day is AM, and your second half of the day is PM. So you have antemeridian and post-meridian. So the start of the day is related to this marker that goes down in what we call the international date line. A great circle or half a circle of a sphere passing through the poles is attested from late 14th century. Originally astronomical, figurative uses tend to suggest point of highest development or fullest power, implying a subsequent decline as an adjective from late 14th century. And I think it's interesting to see at the bottom of that paragraph, it says, people who thought meridian meant junction. And then talk about how people were confused about things. I think we're more confused about things now than what they were back then. So before noon is the antemeridium, and synonymous with morning. There's that year again, 1776. So by 1776, they called that morning. Interesting. Anything with that year on it makes me suspicious. So just going back now to the Google Earth map, I wanted to follow the date line across the North Pole. So that's the North Pole. So if we go back to this island here, I think technically it's called Wrangel Island, but there's a few different locations on that which mostly seem to be deserted, according to Google. And if you click on these, it kind of just puts you off the trace, off the scent, by saying it's all abandoned and this place is really boring. And then if you click onto these, the Federal State Budget Institution, sounds pretty official to me, but they call it a nature reserve in brackets, or sorry, in quotations. And then I just thought, there's a little bit more here too. That cave looks really, kind of like somewhere you could float your boat into. But yeah, so these locations are kind of like, they don't give you much information to work with, but that Wrangel Island, and if this is the magnetic pole, it's no wonder that they would make it into some kind of state reserve. Federal location. And if we hop, what I actually got thinking was, okay, so we're talking about times and locations. We know that Greenwich Mean Time is it's like a marker, even though, yeah, I guess that's 0. So anything to the left is minus, anything to the right is plus. So Greenwich Mean Time is your marker for time. And why would that be? So I went and found Greenwich on the map, which is in London. And I wanted to match it to the magnetic pole. And I found out that this is a known for forever. This has been known, but obviously I'm learning a little bit about this now. And if you mark it all the way over to here, you get a straight line. Okay. And there's a reason Greenwich is the zero. It is the median, international median, because when you draw a line straight from Greenwich to using a compass, your magnetic compass, it doesn't just take you to that magnetic pole. It takes you right across the center of the true north. Okay? So from Greenwich, your straight line takes you to the magnetic pole, but it crosses the middle of the north. See that? It goes right through the middle of the north. And here's our international date line. And it runs directly beside the line. So that line is the international date line. And it stops. That international date line stops at the North Pole. It doesn't go further than that. So we know that that's the center right there. And this is kind of just for everyone who didn't know that, like me. But I guess the significance here is, and what the point I'm trying to make is, the Greenwich mean time or median line is the exact opposite of, or not the exact opposite, but it's directly in line with the magnetic pole, which is also directly in line and in conjunction with the center, the North Pole, the true north. So you have the magnetic pole, the true north, and then Greenwich in London. But you couldn't do that from any other location. Obviously, if you keep going, you'll get to the south location and you'll probably go through other points, but you won't be able to do that if the international date line runs straight down to the South Pole, from side to side, I should say. It goes through Greenwich and it goes through the Rupes Nigra, I believe. And you can just see again, the date line and that line to Greenwich run parallel to one another, straight as an arrow. And this is obviously known. This is the meridian line, the Greenwich meridian line. They're obviously featuring a globe model here. And it tells them which countries it goes through and which direction everything is located. But you see there, they've marked out north, south in a straight line. So on the left side is the west, on the right side is the east. And this is how they depict it on the globe. And how many miles to each place? My mistake. Greenwich isn't in London, 143 miles out of London. It looks like it's in London. Now there is historical royal significance to the location of Greenwich, and we'll see here that the Queen's House, Royal Observatory, National Maritime Museum, and Cutty's Sark sit at the heart of historic Greenwich, a place that's been shaped by royalty for more than 500 years. Why would they be so interested in that location? Well, knowing that they believed in the energy of the earth, the energy that the earth provided, and being a direct line to the north, magnetic north, and the true north, it follows that they would feel that this is their location of ownership of the kingdom, shall we say. And so here's just some information on, and you can book tickets to go and see all these places. Henry VIII, Elizabeth I were both born there. And yeah, it's a very historically important place for British royalty. The Royal Observatory is also linked to this. And so, as we know, these people watch the skies, they watch what's going on in the stars. They're probably observing celestial activity. And by celestial, I mean not just things we know about, but things we don't know about. And after all, I think the space programs are really there to monitor the activity of the kingdom of Christ. And I think that's what all of these observatories are for, and keeping track of any activity. And they established the Greenwich Mean Time at that place for global timekeeping. That verse that says they changed the times and seasons, and I think that's what we're seeing here. I think it's all part of the bigger picture. And here we can just see that the royal history is anchored in this location and has been for a long time. All the way back to the 15th century, which some people conjecture was the end of the millennial reign, the true end of the millennial reign. And going on that theory, I think it's possible, because I think that it would have taken time for people to make a plan. If they didn't already have a plan, it would have taken an awful lot of time to go all over the earth, probably not in their flying airships. I mean, that would have made it a lot easier than navigating the water, which is what we thought that they did during that time. But I believe they just flew everywhere. And there would have been, from the millennial reign, there would have been factories and production that were actually, all the building materials and the way to make them and the methods that they were using to build them in the first place would have still been around. And so I think just this, but they still would have needed a few hundred years to really get the plan laid and then introduce the new people, or the breeds that would repopulate the earth. And actually, my lunch break did an interesting, I like it when people use data, and he went back in the population data and worked out that according to the official population numbers, which I don't actually think are accurate, but if you're going by the numbers that were given, it works out that the rate of population increase is something like 60+% every 60 years or so. Don't quote me on that, but the rate of population, if you just rewind it and you go retrospectively back, would have been practically nothing in the early 1600s. It's possible, right? I mean, even if they are giving us accurate numbers, it's possible that the repopulation had to happen and that there were only a handful of people going around, or like a very coordinated group of people going around and re-architecting their own story into the earth. And so for me, that's a total possibility. So when they come up with dates like the 1500s, that's very in line with what I think is possible. And then we see here that symbolism in portraits of Queen Elizabeth I. We can see her hand right on a globe, and then we see meridian lines on there too. And I just noticed there's an X. A lot of people are talking about X's and Texas. All my exes live in Texas. Sorry, stupid jokes. And they used a lot of symbology in their images of royalty, a globe, all this kind of thing. Even the colors that they used and the different features of their... So striving for imperial power in the Americas, in the painting, Elizabeth is pointing to Virginia, which was named after her. I don't know how that works. Her name was Elizabeth, so I don't know how her name was also Virginia, but... The Tudor rose is another feature in portraits of Elizabeth I. And as I've been looking at maps, it just occurred to me that I wonder if the rose is some kind of symbol for the North or the flat Earth map as well, in a more artistic format. There's 5 sections to it, so maybe not, but I found that something to speculate over. We have the compass, which points to true north, and all the divisions here. And then this is the red Lancashire or Lancaster rose, and that was related to the Tudors. And then we have the Yorkshire rose. My husband is from Yorkshire, and so then I've lived in Lancashire. So when you look at that Mercator map, it does kind of, if you were to overlay these, I wonder if there would be some significance. And then this yellow in the middle, maybe indicating, the Arctic Circle, which is protecting that sacred city. Just a thought. Symbology means so much to the royal families and to the bloodlines. It would make sense that... And the War of the Roses is very real throughout history. Just the two, kind of warring, and it was usually, I think, divided by Protestants and Catholics. And we'll go into that in other videos a little bit more, but the fight for the globe was bloodline related, religiously fueled, and, I think it's fair to say that the Roman Catholic effort to take Britain was hotly fought, where maybe places like France, it wasn't. It was a little bit more of an easy takeover. And Italy, of course. And here we just have a depiction of this Greenwich median line as if the Earth, well, they show it as a globe. Obviously, this isn't reality, but Eastern and Western hemispheres would be divided in this way. 20, meridian 20, usually considered the dividing line between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. And then again, on the other side, so the international date line in the Pacific Ocean is where you would get, again, that split happening. Here's just a little bit of information. So the Greenwich median, also known as the prime meridian, is an imaginary line that serves as the reference point for measuring 0 degrees longitude. It was last officially established in 1851 and passes through Greenwich, a borough of London, terminating at both the North and South Poles. Historically, the Greenwich Meridian Line played a crucial role in creating accurate maps of the sky. Interesting. So, one of the big question marks a lot of us have who believe in biblical cosmology is if you're spinning on a water ball through space, chasing the sun, and also rotating around the sun and flying through space at ridiculous speeds, how can you even have a map of the sky? How can you have a reliable map? There would be no reliable map. And it doesn't matter how big you make things, the map would still change. So that in itself, big red flag for the globe theory. By observing thousands of celestial objects from the same meridian, they could standardize astronomical maps, which in turn aided maritime navigation. You can't navigate on a map that's changing. In the 17th and 18th centuries, each country defined its own prime meridian. For instance, France and Paris meridian, Prussia had a Berlin meridian. England established its own meridian, passing through a point at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich. If anyone's been there, leave a comment if you have any insights into that from a millennial reign perspective, short season perspective, those kinds of things. Over time, several meridians were established in the observatory, each east of the previous one. The first such meridian, later named after John Flamsteed, was established in 1676. And that number just aligns with exactly 100 years before 1776. Another key date in our short season calendar. And in 1851, Sir George Biddle Airy established the fourth meridian, which ran through an instrument called the Airy Transit Circle. That would be something to look into more, I think. That name in itself piques my interest. This instrument allowed astronomers to determine the positions of stars and other celestial objects by observing their transit, crossing the meridian, and zenith distance, angle between the object and the observer, and the point directly overhead. Geographical path, the historical Greenwich Meridian doesn't just pass through England, it also intersects several other countries. I found this whole topic extremely interesting. I had never done this much deep dive into. I knew that the magnetic pole was not the true north, it was separate. And I also wonder if how people say that the magnetic north is moving is just because they're measuring it from different perspectives. So if you think that the north is aligned with, say, a certain direction from one point, and then you go somewhere else and you measure it, it's not going to go right through the center of the true north. And I think that's why people might say it's moving. Just a thought. I haven't done much looking into those observations of the magnetic north. But this map, I'm sure we've all pored over it over and over and over again. And again, just looking at how the date line and the line from the magnetic north run right across to Greenwich. And Want to leave you with this thought, Matthew 7:14, KJV. Because strait is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Thank you for joining me today. It's been an adventure for me to go through all of this. I'm sure there's a lot more to discover. Looking forward to your comments and interacting with you all. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.